Ramses II. His history does not fit, 1279 to 1213 BCE. He is too late in history. However, the fact that he existed while the Israelites were actually in the desert, where they received the Torah, makes perfect sense of why the Torah calls the cities Ramses. There is archaeological evidence that Pitom and Ramses, were built upon an older city, and that was Avaris. Pitom means storage in ancient Egypt, and it must have been a store city on the frontier. Avaris was located on the eastern frontier, exactly where Goshen was. The tax levied against the Hebrews would pay for the building of the city that was to be Avaris, and then later rebuilt, named Ramses. Archaeologists have discovered that Avaris was built with major silos. These are also indicative of the great silos Yosef had built and filled with grain during the 7 years of plenty. What about Thutmose II? The timeline of a new pharaoh fits very well, and also his facts and history. Josephus talks about Pharaoh being Senmosret of the Middle Kingdom because he was in the mid-1800s BCE, and that fits to the start of the bondage. The name Mitzrayim in Hebrew actually comes from the Egyptian of Misran, which means the two Misras. There was a lower Misra and an upper Misra, like we talked before, that combined to be Mitzrayim. During many dynasties in Egypt, including the Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom, there were many co-regents and also nomarchs. There were two pharaohs, so to speak, or more specifically, two rulers in Egypt. There was an Egypt district ruler, and then there was the global ruler of Pharaoh. One the king of Egypt, the other one the pharaoh. This corroborates what the Torah was saying. This information helps us reconcile the timeline in Egypt. We notice that the first era of Egyptian history all calls the pharaohs king. It is possible that these kings of Egypt actually coincided with later pharaohs that they served with. They were the king, as the Bible called them, while the pharaoh was the ultimate ruler, as the Bible also calls them. Therefore, Egyptian history is not consecutive, but it's actually concurrent, and not nearly as long as we thought of. When looking for Yosef, we have to look carefully at the verses in the Torah. He was a commoner who became a royal. Perhaps he was a co-regent or nomarch. He was like a vizier. During this time on the throne, he made Egypt prosper. There's evidence of famines in quite a few periods of Egyptian history. Genesis calls Pharaoh the king of Egypt because that was all he was. He was king of the local city Egypt near Goshen. Later, he is Pharaoh of the land of Egypt, and there is the king of Egypt, who was a local nomarch. Finally, at the end of the bondage, during the plagues, Pharaoh again becomes Pharaoh, king of Egypt, indicating a time when he kicked out all the local nomarchs and ruled all the land himself. It also indicates that he moved his kingdom from Thebes of Upper Egypt down back to closer to Goshen in Lower Egypt. A new king arose that did not know Yosef. His sons did not inherit his throne. They did not know Yosef. He was erased from history, and therefore his name would not be found. The Santorini volcano on an island of the Mediterranean appears to prove that the 10 plagues were not caused by God. However, believers can be assured all natural occurrences also occur by God's hand. Further, the volcano is in the middle of the Mediterranean and close to Egypt. It would cause the 10 plagues all over southern Europe and northern Africa, yet only Egypt was hit by the plagues, and not even the entire country. Goshen was spared. Further, the Judean sages taught that when it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart, it means he sought excuses for the plagues. Reports of a coincidental volcano made Pharaoh think that the Lord of the Hebrews was not behind the plagues.